Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Looks like we've capped out. We've hit the debt limit, according to the Treasury Department. And now we're going to start using a series of accounting maneuvers to make sure that the federal government continues to pay its bills and doesn't collapse the entire global financial market. Just a little thing like that. We've hit the limit, and Republicans, well, they've seen an opportunity. They are giddy. Our GOP friends giddy with delight over the prospect of checking another box off of their harming workers' wet dream list, going after Social Security and Medicare. Yeah, you knew it was coming. Look, not surprising. This has been their moment. Oh boy, this has been their fantasy. This is what they dream of. This is what keeps them up in the middle of the night, dreaming and fantasizing about. Basically, getting Granny back on the cat food. Now you had this messaging machine. Republican Rick Allen from Georgia. He just recently said that cutting Social Security was a good idea because people want to work longer. You want to work longer, absolutely. So yeah, cut that Social Security. Yeah, And look, there may be some people out there that do want to work longer, that do want to continue, and we should make that possible. But we don't go, because one guy wants to work longer, you're going to have to work until you die. I'm sorry, Rick, not buying that. You had Republican Representative Michael Waltz from Florida on national television say that if we really want to talk about the debt and spending, it's the entitlements. It's the entitlement programs, Social Security and Medicare. This is where they're going. The Republican Study Committee, the big group of the GOP Brain Trust. I'm sorry, I can't say that without laughing. They've got their 2023 budget calling for massive cuts to Social Security and Medicare, increasing the Medicare age to 67, increasing Social Security to 70. And when the speaker, the guy who sold his soul, was asked point blank what his intention was on entitlement reform, is that part of the negotiations, Mr. Speaker? He said, well, he wouldn't predetermine anything. And what that really means is, yeah, duh. We've only been telling you for a couple of decades now that we want to destroy this. Duh. Breaking news over at the F channel. Breaking news. Headline: retiring early could actually harm your health, according to a new study. Breaking news. Now you got House Republicans, you got the GOP Brain Trust, the study committee saying, no, we want people working longer. And the media mouthpiece saying, no, it's going to harm your health if you retire. You should work till you die because it's going to be good for your brain. Keep working. Because if you retire early, harmful, bad. So keep working. Now this according to the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization. And their argument is not wrong. It's not wrong that if you retire and you do nothing, you're probably going to have some problems. I think of retirement as going to do something that you want to do. You worked all those years, you saved for the golden period of your life. Now you go and enjoy things. You spend time with the grandkids, volunteer, do something. But no, they're going to spin this as, no, we can't let people retire because, they'll do nothing. And we need them to get to work. Now, what's interesting is you take the Republican wet dream of destroying Social Security and the safety net for our seniors that's pulled seniors out of poverty, the best anti-poverty program that we've ever passed, I believe. You've married it with the F channel and the media moguls here in this country saying, hey, it's bad for you if you retire. And then we got this little thing in Davos going on where they're saying that we need to disrupt our approach to retirement savings because people are living longer, and we have mandatory retirement ages, and so we should scrap that. Let people work forever. And it seems interesting to me how all of the forces of the wealth class are aligning. You've got the Republican politicians, you've got the American media, you've even got this this little economic forum that they throw on every year to tell us how we're going to solve our problems without actually solving any of the problems or having a plan to do that. Like funding things. Oh no, I can't pay for that. No. While we're speaking about Davos, I see Joe Manchin. And we can't have one of these stories without Joe Manchin. You remember the other day we talked about him and Kirsten Sinema high-fiving over the idea on the foreign stage that we're not going to do anything on the filibuster reform because we're not going to raise your taxes, rich people. Rest assured, we got your back. Here's the thing. It's easy to wheel and deal with other people's lives. And I got to ask you, hey, working people, hey, working folk like me, do you find it interesting that the first thing that comes to mind for Republicans when talking about, cutting spending is taking it from you? When we talk about debt, when we talk about deficits, it's taking it from you and your family. Does it make you kind of think? Because here's the thing, Joe Manchin and Mitt Romney, they've got a new plan. Yes, because Republicans have said, we might be willing to do something on the debt ceiling. We might not allow the global, economy to collapse if you just give us the pound of flesh, which is retirement security for seniors. Let us cut the program. Let us cut it. Let us cut it. Well, you've got Romney and Manchin, which, when I think working class, I think two, multimillionaires like Romney and Manchin. They have introduced the Trust Act. Man, so good at naming stuff. It's a Trust Act. There's trust. The only thing I trust when Mitt Romney and Joe Manchin come together is I'm going to get the short end of the stick, that working people are screwed. But this Trust Act, their Trust Act, is going to establish a bipartisan rescue committee because we're going to rescue Social Security. This is the ultimate, we have to kill it to save it speak. This is the ultimate, we have to destroy it and tear it down to nothing so that we can rebuild it into, what we want it to be instead of what working people need it to be. What this Trust Act is going to do, you're going to have this rescue committee. Understand, Social Security doesn't need to be rescued. And it doesn't add to the debt. Legally, cannot add to long-term debt. Can't, doesn't. In fact, what's happened over the years, we've stolen from Social Security. Go back to the Johnson years, go back to the Reagan years. We've stolen trillions from Social Security. And now working people, again, are going to have to take it on the chin because, we don't want to raise taxes on rich people. That's what this boils down to. Understand that. So you think about it, what rabbit does Manchin pull out of his hat? Cut Social Security. Cut Medicare. Make your access to it further down the road under the guise of we're just going to work together. We're going to work together on solutions because we've got a debt problem. Again, we don't have a debt problem with Social Security. We got a funding problem. Put more money into it. You know how we make Social Security solvent? Right now, immediately, scrap the cap. Why is it that working people pay Social Security tax on every dime they make, and yet our gazillionaires, not so much? Maybe enact a wealth tax, since most rich people don't earn wages. There's an idea. Oh, we can't have that conversation. That would be much like solving a real problem. Now, I look at this Trust Act, which is nothing more than a rehashed Simpson-Bowles Commission. If you remember the Simpson-Bowles Commission during the Obama years, which was an abomination back then. Again, the idea being we need to push it off. We need to make it harder to get. We need to put more obstacles in the way so that, because, you working people, you're just going to waste it. You're going to just fret it away. Now, what I find interesting is Manchin's providing cover for the Republicans here. He's the go-between the MAGA extremists who run the Republican Party and the Biden administration, because he thinks that Biden's going to cave. Oh yeah, we're going to find a bipartisan solution to screw over future workers. They're not going to do it to people retired today. So Granny, rest assured, you're okay. Your grandchildren, screwed. Your children, probably screwed. But definitely the grandkids. And yeah, no big deal. As long as we've got our gas stove that we can hold on to. But understand, our MAGA friends and MAGA people, understand, this means you. This is your Social Security too. This is your safety net. This is your retirement they're fooling with. They're going to hold the debt ceiling as a hostage tool to get the pound of flesh, your retirement security, to be put into, well, there's more talk of privatization again. This is another manufactured crisis. This is another in the GOP playbook to get their pound of flesh. And of course, as I say all the time, Republicans hate working people. Again, look at another policy. Make no mistake about this. This Republican Party is going to use this debt crisis to harm working people. And that's the point. The cruelty, I keep coming back to this. The cruelty is the point. So my question to the audience, my question to you is, what are you going to do about it? What's the plan? How are you going to stand up? You made the mistake of putting these economic terrorists in Congress. What are you going to do about it? I look at France right now. Oh, you're not going to bring up France. Yeah, their working people get it. In France, they're talking about raising the retirement age to 64, from 62 to 64. Think of this. Think of this. They're talking about there's an idea. There's a plan. They're striking in the streets. The trains have stopped. Electricity supplies have stopped. The streets are jammed. They're saying, no, the people are speaking. Here, we've got the F channel. We've got the F channel. You know, if you retire early, it could be bad for your health. You need 2 or 3 jobs. It's working, 2, 3 jobs. It's good for you. Uniquely American, as George Bush once said. And I keep coming back to it. How many times do we have to play this reel? Because we've seen this movie over and over again. This has always been their fantasy. This is their fetish. And it is about the power and it's about the money, but it's also about the cruelty. Because what we know is if you destroy Social Security, if you take this away from seniors, we're going to go back to what we had in the past. Massive poverty and old age. People dying in horrible conditions. And that, I got to think, just makes them giddy with glee. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So union membership has dropped from 10.3 to 10.1%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's the lowest that it's been in, well, many decades. I mean, we're almost to the point in the private sector where the density is where it was illegal to be a union member. And they could fire you, at will because of you signed a yellow dog contract. Now we're at a moment where union approval ratings higher than they've been at any point in my lifetime. 71% of Americans approve of labor unions, but interestingly enough, 58% of the non-union workers say they're not interested in joining unions. And a huge part of this, I believe it has to do with the fact that workers keep getting harassed, intimidated, beaten up, and all of the things that come along with attempting to join and form unions. And I look at this story coming out of Florida, where the NLRB, the regional director there, has said that the election at Starbucks in Florida was so badly tainted, was so egregious in the number of violations, that when the workers voted and voted against the union 21-11, that there's no way to go back and rerun that election and make it fair. And what they're talking about doing is imposing a mandate to bargain. And this is what I said back when Amazon, beat up their workers in Bessemer, Alabama, with all of the plethora of egregious violations. I said the NLRB should come in and say, you know what? You've done so many things, tainted the pool so badly, harassed these people so much that you should have to engage in bargaining. And I was told, no, they can't do that. They have the power to do this. And I'm glad to see them doing this now. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it plays out. But, this could be just the small test case. I mean, at a huge facility like Amazon, that's a big lift. But this is, I'm telling you, this is something that has to happen. We need major comprehensive labor law reform to ensure that workers who want to form unions and want to join unions can join unions. This is one of those moments that I'm just, we just need it. It really is. When the numbers are that stark, it tells you something needs to be done. Let's go to the phones. We got Bob from San Jose on line one. Bob, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, although I can barely hear you. Because I'm a broadcast engineer. I can tell you that the transmit level coming back on your hybrid is not high enough. I can hear you, but not very well.
Well, then you should come over and help me fix that, because we've been working on it.
I would. I'm in Silicon Valley, which I'm sure is quite far from you. By the way, it's spelled SILLY-CON. Silicon, and lots of silicons have happened out here. No, what I was calling about is there is a I guess you could say a puritanical school of thought that goes back hundreds of years. I call it a Christian heresy, and what it is they assume you are in effect a sinner by birth and whatever, and along through your life, if you don't have wealth, it's because you made mistakes, you made bad decisions, and God did not bless you. So if you have wealth, God did bless you. That's the proof that you are a good person. But if you don't have wealth, then you are a bad person, and you deserve your consequences. And this is let's say I call it a Christian heresy because I have heard this is in some churches, and the Puritans were one of them, have this as their core belief.
Yeah, it's the prosperity gospel, people. You're absolutely right.
Well, prosperity gospel is a piece of it on the other side, if you will. But this is the one that if you're poor, it's because you made bad decisions, and you need to suffer your consequences.
No, I agree. No, what's interesting though is they follow the guy who said, help the poor, feed the sick, heal the sick, feed the hungry, clothe the naked. At least that's what the book says.
Oh no, that's where I'm coming from. But there's these people who point fingers and say, well, obviously you did something bad. You made bad decisions. Therefore, you get your consequences. gee, sorry.
No, I agree with you. You were born into the wrong family. You should have been born
Well,
rich like
you
us.
could say that. You made a bad choice of who your parents were.
No, it's sad, and the reality is it comes out in our policies, doesn't it?
Well, it's I tend to look at things as I tend to think of life as being like we're in a lifeboat, and we're sharing this lifeboat together. We can either fight with each other and point fingers at each other and go around in circles, or we can cooperate with each other and help each other, in which case we might make it to shore together.
It's a good way of thinking of things. I wish more people thought that way.
Yeah, well, see, I'm blanking on where it is. It's somewhere in the Bible. Calvinism, by the way, is the name of that thing I was talking about. It took me a while to come back to that because I find it such a detestable thought.
No, I'm with
Anyway,
you.
I do want to thank you for being on WCPT, which is the station I listen to, even though I'm in San Jose, through the internet.
It's amazing, and we love our folks there in Chicago and all of our radio affiliates. And I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Bye.
Love to hear you call back again. No, I mean, he's not wrong. Look, these religious elitists who look down, and this is the reason that I've taken a beating over the years for this, for saying that I don't think churches should be the place where we help the poor and the sick. This is where policy, government policy, us using our government as a tool to do the things collectively that we can't individually do. Helping the sick, helping the poor, making sure that no child goes to bed hungry, which good on Joe Biden here in the next couple of years. They're moving towards ending childhood hunger. Should have done that 50 years ago. But this idea that the churches will be benevolent and dole this stuff out, I wish that were true. It's not. And I've lived that experience of having the church folks look down their nose at you while they're giving you half measures. Because they do have this belief that they're better, that their wealth, that their economic power makes them superior, not just in public spaces, but in the eyes of the heavenly spirits. And that's dangerous. Because when they are allowed to move those ideas into policymaking, again, it comes back to the cruelty. The suffering that you deserve, you're going to get. So we're going to take Social Security, we're going to take Medicare, we're going to take food stamps, we're going to take heating assistance because you don't deserve this. Because, just like Bob said, you did something wrong. You're being punished and you deserve this. This is the thinking of these folks. And it's scary because, well, they don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about this country. They care about themselves and their narrow ideology. And that's what's frightening to me. Because we've as a society, I think, moved a little bit in that, not totally, but a little bit in that direction, to where it's okay to kick those who are down instead of reaching that helping hand out and helping someone up. We can get back to it. We can come together. At least that's my hope. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day Lewis Hine photographed child workers standing on spinning frames to mend threads and replace empty bobbins at the Bib Mill No. 1 in Macon, Georgia. It was just one example of the appalling use of children in industrial labor. Hine built his career on photographic portraits of young miners and mill workers, child cotton pickers, and factory workers. In 1908, he was hired by the National Child Labor Committee to document child laborers across the country. For the next 15 years, Hine would contribute over 5,000 photographs to the cause of ending child labor. Photo historian Dale Kaplan described the ways in which Hine captured these images, writing, Hine, the gentleman actor and mimic, assumed a variety of personas, including Bible salesman, postcard salesman, and industrial photographer, making a record of factory machinery to gain entry into the workplace. When unable to deflect his confrontations with management, he simply waited outside the canneries, mines, factories, farms, and sweatshops with his 50 pounds of photographic equipment and photographed children as they entered and exited the workplace. NCLC investigators referenced the photographs in reports on particular industries and locations. The NCLC also used the photographs to illustrate its own publications and succeeded in placing them in newspapers, progressive publications, and exhibits. One NCLC poster that featured Hine's portrait read, "Making human junk. Shall industry be allowed to put these costs on society?" By 1912, the NCLC persuaded Congress to create a United States Children's Bureau. The two organizations worked together to investigate abuses of child laborers. Years of legislative and judicial battles followed, until finally, in 1938, Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Growing up, I absorbed a lot of values from my old Texas daddy. A strong commitment to the common good, a healthy work ethic, and a lively sense of humor. But one thing about him I've rejected: his determination to have a perfect yard of thick, verdant St. Augustine grass. Lord, how he worked at it, laying sod, watering, fertilizing, watering, weeding, watering, spreading pesticides, watering, mowing, more watering. But it was too hot, too dry, too infested with blight, bugs, slugs, and such. He was up against Texas nature, and he just couldn't win. So I've gone in the opposite direction, slowly nurturing a natural yard of native trees, drought-tolerant plants, and a general live-with-nature ethic in my little landscape. I'm hardly alone in this rejection of the uniform green grass imperative. A spontaneous yard rebellion is taking hold across our country as more and more households, neighborhoods, businesses, etc. shift to a nature-friendly approach. A particularly encouraging push for change is coming from school kids, elementary level through college, who are appalled by the poisoning of our globe and organizing locally to do something that both makes a difference and makes a statement. One exemplary channel for their activism is a student movement called Rewild Your Campus. Of course, some people consider wild yards to be scruffy, ugly, unruly. That's their choice, but some also insist that tidy grass lawns must be everyone's choice. So they proclaim themselves to be the yard police, demanding that cities and homeowner associations make green grass uniformity the law. They filed busybody lawsuits and run right-wing social media campaigns targeting people and groups that disobey. This is Jim Hightower saying, these attacks are silly because they are silly, and also because they're attacking the future. To work for yard sanity and choice, go to rewild.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, I still have to... I'm loving the Trump justifications, because the one thing Republicans do really well, gymnastics. They are great at mental gymnastics and, BS. We talked yesterday about Trump's truth, because he truths things out, and then people get to retruth his truth, which is, BS that they just keep spinning. But his reasoning for having the classified documents, this is the best one yet. I mean, his positions have been evolving, to use corporate speak. They're making stuff up. But this latest one is brilliant. This is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He said that the fake news media and crooked Democrats keep saying that I had a large number of documents in order to make Biden class documents look less significant. When I was in the Oval Office, he says, or elsewhere, and papers were distributed to groups of people and me, they would be often in striped paper folders with classified or confidential or another word on them. I'm not quite sure what that other word is. When the session was over, he said, they would collect the papers, but not the folders. And I saved them, hundreds of them. He's a hoarder. Remember, they were just ordinary, inexpensive folders with various words printed on them. They were a cool keepsake. So I said this from the beginning. This is why he took all of those documents. Just to say, look what I've got. The cool keepsake. The difference is, well, the documents were in it. No FBI actually. Nobody took classified information and put them in those inexpensive folders that had words on them. Here to share some thoughts on if this is a good defense. Will this hold up in court? I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. She's a reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello, happy Thursday.
So what do you make of the latest mental gymnastic defense of why he had, all of this classified information that he refused after numerous requests and all kinds of opportunities to turn them in? Why now is it they were just pretty folders with words, and not even the best words, just words on them.
Just words on them. That is the biggest load of crap. There is because Trump decided to sue over all of this stuff in Florida courts, as you might recall. There is a list of everything that the FBI took from Mar-a-Lago, and so it's not just folders. I mean, there definitely were some folders with words like classified and secret and yada yada on them, but there were lots and lots of papers as well, to the tune of 13,000 plus papers. And that fit into several boxes, and that's what was taken. This is not, the same as throwing a bunch of, folders that you think are neat, into your, into your keepsake, your little, hope chest or something.
No, but this gives me a whole new image of Donald Trump. The reason he's wealthy is because he's a hoarder. He picks up the loose change on the street. He's the one who takes all of the things that people discard and he makes them useful again. Like classified information.
Right, exactly. I'm sure he was just using this classified information just for useful purposes with a couple of his friends from overseas, and
it's perfect.
I'm sure.
It's perfect discussion material for the coffee table.
Exactly. I mean, I think when I have folders that say taxes on them, I put them on my coffee table because there's nothing that people that I know want to see more than my folders of my taxes.
Yeah, but those weren't cool ones with classified written on it or
like
other
maybe
words.
If I just wrote some really sexy things on it, like grocery list or something that really highlights my daily life. I feel like maybe that's something that would introduce or would interest my friends over a Scrabble game.
Yeah. Now again, we're in this moment because Biden's now got himself in a ringer over classified documents, and I think this is serious. I think we have to do a much better job of dealing with classified documents and knowing where they are. I got some serious questions, but these two situations are not the same. When it came to Biden's attention, as we're finding out, immediately they turned him over. Here you go. You don't have to subpoena us. You don't have to have the FBI come and grab them. Here they are. Here's your stuff back. Different worlds, but in the mental gymnastics that is known as the Trump brain, he claims he did nothing wrong and it's all Joe Biden's fault.
And he's demanding that Joe Biden get raided by the FBI. And it's hilarious because it's like, well, what's the FBI going to do? They're just going to show up and be like, we're going to raid the house. Be like, well, we already turned over all the stuff to you guys. Oh, okay. That's really, it's not very exciting. And, given what happened on January 6th, then the new special counsel, and I feel like the FBI's really got enough on their plate right now that they don't need to be doing a bunch of other raids that are unnecessary. But yeah, this is what Trump has decided that he wants. He wants some sort of equivalence. I think he wants every former president's home raided. Like any minute, they're going to break down the door of Jimmy Carter's house, and he wants
journalists to be arrested. I mean, this story coming out of the Supreme Court is just remarkable to me. That the part that blows my mind, if you're doing an investigation, as we're finding out about the leak of the Dobbs brief, you interview everyone. we're finding out that the justices weren't interviewed. How explain that to me? Their wives weren't interviewed. Their husbands weren't interviewed. Explain to me again why that would not be. Why are we just looking at the lowly law clerks who I said from the beginning, my thought is it's Alito who leaked it. He's got a history of being tied to some leaks. It's Alito. How do you not interview him?
I'm not saying that it's Alito, because that would be wrong of me, but I think it's Alito.
Well, you're a journalist, but you know when all arrows are pointing in that direction, going, yeah, here's a guy who has a history of this stuff. It's probably him.
You would think that somebody would actually question him. The thing is that this investigation wasn't actually done by the U.S. Marshals. Everybody keeps thinking, oh, this is a full report from the U.S. Marshals. And it's like, no, that's not how this was done. It's the Marshal of the Supreme Court, which is basically the person who runs security for the building. So the actual Supreme Court justices are this woman's boss. So it doesn't really make sense for her to like go into their office and be like, hey, I need to talk to you about things that you may or may not have leaked to people, and oh, by the way, could I have a raise? Like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And early on in this investigation, the FBI stepped in and said, hey, yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on, but do you need us to do this investigation for you?
Nah.
And the Supreme Court said no. And there's a key reason for that. If they actually did a legit investigation for the FBI, from the FBI on this, then there would have to actually be charges involved. I mean, these are government documents that were taken, that were basically given and handed out to everybody. And so the person who would actually be responsible for it might legitimately be found and could get in trouble, including Samuel Alito.
Is there a crime in this, though? I mean, I have yet to find a place where someone said, this is the crime. Is there a crime associated with this?
There are some low-level kind of stuff it's a non-crime crime.
Yeah, but to have a Supreme Court justice, having even that kind of a crime, probably doesn't look that great.
No, definitely not. And that's the other thing too, is that again, this comes back to the lack of any kind of ethics rules at the Supreme Court. We're at almost 20 years that John Roberts has been overseeing this court as the Chief Justice, and he has never really crafted his own sort of ethics rules for his court. And perhaps that's one of the major reasons that his court has no ethics.
That's the reason I call them the six dictators in robes. You look at the things that they've done. In fact, this Saturday, going to be the 13th anniversary of corporations becoming people and money becoming speech.
Yeah. And, I just keep thinking if I form enough LLCs, then maybe I'll be able to swing an election. But, it's not how that works.
No, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris. Sarah's a reporter at Raw Story. Rawstory.com is the website if you want to check out the incredible work that she does there. You brought up the word ethics. I'm thinking Republican House clown show. Ethics, ethics nightmare if you stop and think about it. Or just another, it's just Thursday in Republican world. We find out now that this George Santos or Anthony DeValder or Katrina Ravincic or whatever her name is, evidently was a drag queen in Brazil. On top of all of the other fanciful kind of stories that this let's go there. They're just nice stories that he's created.
Right? Like it's an entirely different identity with a different name, even. Like most of the people who have talked to the press about him, who've known him for years, have said he's never gone by George Santos. I've always known him as Anthony. But yeah, so his latest denial is I was never a drag queen performer in Brazil. And
except there's a video.
Nobody said that you were a drag queen performer. I mean, it's just clear that you showed up at Pride in drag, and not even good drag. Like, that's the thing, is that if you're gonna do drag, like, at least watch a YouTube video on how to do your makeup well. Like, this guy can't even do that. Like,
and look, I don't have a problem with him being in drag. I honestly don't. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me at all. But don't be a hypocrite about it.
Don't be a hypocrite about it. Don't support the Don't Say Gay laws. I mean, you've got an entire party that is basically spending a lot of their time trying to ban drag queens or force drag entertainment to be adult only, because God forbid you see a drag queen in a library. That's the kind of person that this guy has joined up with, like the people who hate who he is. So I never have understood why Republicans, just gay Republicans, decide to stay with the party instead of at least, maybe jumping to an independent. But
no, because they know the gig. The gigs, all that stuff is just, it's smoke, it's outrage candy, it's divisive stuff to keep people pitted against each other. The real policy is the money, how much they can bilk out of the working class. It always comes back to the money.
And that's kind of what we're seeing right now with the debate over the debt ceiling. And all of the sudden Republicans have decided that they care about spending, and, we want to do Social Security cuts, even though we said we didn't want to do Social Security cuts, and we want to force everybody to pay more taxes on their food and clothing. And I mean, it's just like all of the things that I feel like we told voters throughout the course of the 2022 midterms that they denied. They're now just like taking what we said and making it happen. And I just want to stand back and be like, we told you guys.
No, because you told the truth. When we came back from Florida, I said, conservative world is what South Carolina, Florida, these southern states look like. Everywhere you go, you're reaching into your pocket. You want to go to a public park, it's going to cost you money. You want to cross the road, you got to pay a toll. It all comes down to the working class being fleeced at every opportunity. But you're not paying taxes. You're just being charged for everything you do. And that's conservative world. Privatize everything, profitize everything, and bilk the working class out of every dime that they make.
And basically everybody in the middle gets screwed. I mean, that's the thing, is that if you don't have the money for your own security, for your own fire protection, to pave your own roads in your own neighborhood, then you're screwed with the rest of us. And I just do not understand why there are voters who legitimately believe that these guys are on their side, because over and over and over again, they've showed us the opposite.
It's that, was it Maya Angelou, the quote, when someone tells you who they are, believe them.
When someone shows you.
Yeah, believe them. I mean,
believe them.
We knew this was coming, that fake tax thing that they put out yesterday, now talking about gutting Social Security. This is a direct attack on working people. And all of the divisive stuff aside, don't care about drag, don't care about what bathroom you go to, don't care about any of that stuff. It's all about robbing you and me and putting money in their pockets. Because we know the very wealthy, they spend a lot of money on contributions, thanks to our six dictators in robes who 13 years ago Saturday made corporations people and money speech.
And I think that's a big thing too, is that, of course, Kevin McCarthy loves George Santos. He's got a very narrow majority. He needs Santos, but of course Santos is distracting everybody with, drag pictures and videos while, Congress is trying to run off with all of our money.
Yeah, so let me ask you, do you think that's part of it, to get Democrats all worked up? Because I keep saying, stay out of this. Let the Republicans hang themselves with Santos. No Democrat should say a word about it. Just go, it's who they are. That's the party. There they are. Yet I see all the time, he should resign. I don't care if he resigns. You're just going to get some other extremist in there who's going to be more dangerous, because at least he'll be somewhat functional. This guy is horribly dysfunctional. I would argue on the evil side, but leave him there. Don't try and save the Republican Party. They're going to float or sink on their own.
That is absolutely the case. I think the only good that would come from kicking Santos out of office is it would mean that McCarthy would lose one person for a couple of months, for the months of a campaign. So anytime you have anybody who, like the Florida congressman who fell off a roof or something the other day, like if he's in the hospital for a little bit, or he can't get on a plane because both legs are broken or whatever, like that's another vote that's being taken away from McCarthy. And if you talk about George Santos being pulled because, he's out and there's somebody else who's going to run in that election in like 90 or 120 days or whatever, that's one more. You've got Buchanan in California, who's furious over the fact that he has worked his entire career to become the chair of oversight and now doesn't get it. And he's talking about retiring, not like at the end of his term, like right now. There's one more. And then, that's the ball game. That's how very little majority he has. And it means that Matt Gaetz can jump in and take over.
I love that story. He's gonna. I'm gonna take my. I didn't get one on my committee. I'm gonna take my ball and go home because look,
Right.
you put Scott, pardon me, Perry on the oversight committee. You got Trainwreck, Green, and Gosser on that committee. You've basically made that committee. It's going to be a joke. There's nothing serious about what they're going to do over the next 2 years.
I mean, a lot of those committees are basically jokes because, I mean, they've spread a lot of there's like 8 main huge committees, and all of the crazies are on all of them. And I want to say with oversight, it's something like 15 out of 17 Republicans on the committee are election deniers. I mean, that these people are supposed to do oversight. Like, do you know what that even means?
No, what they know it means we're going to go and we're going to attack Joe Biden for everything.
Right.
And there's going to be an impeachment. There's an impeachment watch. I keep, when are the articles going to be they've drawn them up. They just have to put them out in public because they want to. They so want to. It's that fetish thinking. They're fantasizing stealing Social Security on their wet dream list. Impeaching Joe Biden right there on the list.
I mean, what would be super awesome is if they basically shut down the government because of, the whole debt ceiling thing and infuriated the entire country over that, and then came back to Congress and then just went forward with impeachment. I mean, it's just like, that would be one horrible thing after another. And I think that would be the nail in their coffin. And we'd go right into 24 at that point.
No, it's coming because they have no plans. I mean, they really have no plan on how to lead other than Ron DeSantis has a plan. Ron DeSantis has a plan to make workers' lives better. Evidently, they may be moving to not taxing gas stoves in the coming years. So you can get that gas stove that you won't give up without your cold, dead hands on it, tax-free.
I bet if we told Ron DeSantis that gas stoves were gay, he would ban them. Right? Like, or like, it's like a feminist stove, and he'd be like, no.
No, see, I keep saying, and I keep wondering, we're so screwed up in this country. I wonder if, if we just found out that, I don't know, lead in gasoline was bad or asbestos was bad, would we, or lead in paint was bad. If we're just now finding this out and we're rolling this out to the public, if you would have, Matt Gaetz going on the floor of the House with an asbestos coat going, no, you can't take my asbestos coat, or Marsha Blackburn going, how dare you deny my children lead paint chips before bed. They would be doing that.
It would be so amazing if they would do that. Throughout the course of the last administration, they relaxed a bunch of regulations, particularly when it comes to like chemicals.
The PFAs,
yeah, and a bunch of other stuff. Like in Oklahoma, for a long time, you could light your water on fire. Like, this is a thing that happens in a lot of drilling areas of the country, and so I think having regulations like that are helpful if you don't like cancer.
Yeah,
but I guess Republicans, that's helpful for them. They like that cancer. I mean, they just legalized smoking in the building now? I mean, that's the other thing. Republicans said now you can smoke in the Capitol. It's like, seriously?
Guns and smoke. Gunsmoke.
And what are they smoking is my question.
I wish they would. I wish that's what they were smoking, because maybe they'd mellow out a little bit. They're not smoking that. I wish they would. Simple. Now, we brought up DeSantis. Evidently, the story out now, Trump is planning to hammer DeSantis.
With what?
You're going to go on Truth. You're going to go Truth. Evidently coming back to Twitter. Going maybe back to Facebook too. Going to go after them. Going to go after his personal issues. Evidently, the fact that nobody likes him. How did I heard that the DeSantis has a charisma deficit?
Well, that is definitely true.
And I would agree with that.
He does not do well in front of people. He doesn't do well, like one-on-one. He's fine in a controlled environment at a podium. If you looked at some of the footage whenever he was with Joe Biden, for the hurricane stuff, Joe's like hugging people, being, mourner in chief, compassionate guy, and Ron DeSantis is just sort of sitting there with his arms really straight, looking like he's wearing 2 suits. And it's just the weirdest sort of image. And that tends to be like when you can see somebody who's absolutely the opposite of him, standing up next to him. It's really pronounced. And, I mean, I would love for Trump to spend the next year tearing down Ron DeSantis. That would
Absolutely.
be so handy.
Oh, yeah. No, sitting in this seat, that would be great. Like my kids say, though, the phrase that they used was, he doesn't people well.
No, he definitely does not people. That is an excellent way to describe it.
But the next year is going to be interesting because you got Nikki Haley, who's talking about possibly jumping in with her pointy witch shoes. You've got Pompeo's probably going to be in. It's going to be a wild, wild year.
It is. Somebody was telling me that Nikki Haley's people were tweeting out some articles from like 10 years ago about, like positive economic things that happened in South Carolina. And it's like, dude, 10 years ago? Like, come on, man. Like, that's what you're going for? Like, you're going to try and boost your name ID by talking about being governor in a state where they just got rid of the Confederate flag. I mean, it's just, that's a really, really dumb thing to do, but
it is.
It's Nikki Haley. She may just be running for vice president is what I'm wondering.
No, I think if Trump gets it, it's that Carrie Lake, hands down.
I would think so. I mean, if it was me and I was as nutty as Trump, I'd definitely put a loon like Carrie Lake on there.
I still think the sleeper is Brian Kemp. I think the Republican sleeper is going to be Kemp. But we'll see.
He might be. There are a bunch of people who are saying the same thing, but oh man, if it could be Carrie Lake and Donald Trump,
that would be
that would be comedy gold.
It would be. Finally, I got to get your thought on the war that has begun over at the Miss Universe pageant. Evidently, the ex-beauty queen Carrie Bergine, I guess her name is. She was Miss California in 2009. Had a little sex tape video thing went on, but evidently she is an anti-gay crusader, and she is furious that the Miss Universe is now owned by a trans woman.
And apparently now they're saying that the results were rigged or something. I don't know, but it's so funny. And these are, I mean, who takes this stuff seriously? That's the thing, right? Like, I cannot believe that these still happen and that there are still women out there willing to prove their worth with a bathing suit competition, and their talent has to be some kind of like visual or audio something. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't prioritize intelligence. It doesn't prioritize, community and your involvement in your community. It's a joke. It's all a joke.
But now owned by a trans woman, which has just got to drive the right, well, crazy. Because now you've got DeSantis going to the state universities going, how many of those people do you have on campus? Which is frightening.
I think it would be cool if we had more trans women in the competition. I think that would be amazing, because then you could actually be able to talk about things like, personality and intelligence and whatever. I'm fine with adding men to the competition too, just because why should... Because
you want to see men walking around in bathing suits? Is that where we're going with this?
I kind of want to see what they would do for a talent contest. Like, some dude going to sit there and play the cello without a shirt on? Like, how does that work?
Trust me, you don't want men. You don't want that. Nothing good comes from that. Nothing good. I
don't know. I mean, put that with Ron DeSantis being, showing off his drag performance. I'll watch it.
All right, there you go. Maybe that's how we elect our next president. Scary
God
stuff.
help us.
Rawstory.com is the website. Sarah Burris, reporter at rawstory.com. Check out her work. Sarah, as always, you make me laugh.
My pleasure. Have an awesome weekend.
You too. Thanks so much, our good friend Sarah Burris. Again, make sure you check out the website, rawstory.com. We'll get links on social media, how you can do that. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
We know that we have a small window to invest in clean energy and innovation and clean tech.
European Union unveils Green Deal industrial plan to catch up to America's Inflation Reduction Act. German police crack down on anti-coal protest. Plus,
they write it up, they send it to Ohio, And Mike DeWine and the lawmakers click their heels and say, yes, sir.
Dark money groups led Ohio Republicans to redefine natural gas as green energy.
All of those redefinitions of reality and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We kept asking questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you vetoing it? And now we find out they're just puppets. There's a marionetter in another state that is just making them do the dance. What's the point of an election?
The point is to get the puppets elected in Ohio. And they're doing pretty good at it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, this story out of Ohio is blowing my mind. It comes not long after a huge scandal from the nuclear and coal industry, and now it's the natural gas. Man, is there any Republican in Ohio who can't be bought off?
Well, we'll find out in a moment. But first, in Germany, Swedish teen climate activist Greta Thunberg was detained and released by police this week at a protest against expansion of a controversial coal mine that will destroy the historic village of Lützerath. German officials say the coal is needed to address fossil energy shortages caused by Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. The demolition of Lützerath is part of a compromise deal reached between the government and energy giant RWE last year, allowing the company to destroy the village in return for agreeing to end its coal use by 2030 rather than 2038.
They're destroying the village in order to save it?
That's the theory. A new report reveals banks are still financing dirty fossil fuel projects despite their public pledges to stop. Banking giant HSBC made a secretive $340 million loan to RWE, the fossil energy company that is bulldozing that village, just 3 months after HSBC pledged to phase out coal funding.
HSBC is the worst.
The new report by a coalition of major environmental groups called Banking on Climate Chaos shows the world's biggest banks are still heavily investing in fossil fuels despite very public pledges to target net zero emissions. The top dirty dozen financial institutions include J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and HSBC. The report also found that since the adoption of the Paris Agreement 6 years ago, the world's largest banks have collectively given fossil fuel companies $4.6 trillion in funding.
And given the rest of us the finger.
Meanwhile, in Ohio,
some rich guys in another state got together and said, we want to change natural gas to give it a different definition because it suits our wealthy purposes.
That's Cleveland Plain Dealer editor Chris Quinn talking about how Ohio's Republican-controlled state legislature has falsely redefined polluting natural gas as green energy, despite the fact that it is a significant contributor to man-made global warming.
Unbelievable.
Documents uncovered by utility watchdog Energy and Policy Institute show that the Orwellian language signed into law by Ohio's Republican Governor Mike DeWine is the culmination of a dark money campaign by the American Legislative Exchange Council and other dark money groups to protect the fossil fuel industry.
Now that part, totally believable.
The new law also expands oil drilling in the state's parks. Be aware, the dark money groups are taking their disinformation campaign to other states.
I'm serious. They just, ran the Speaker of the House out of Ohio because he took tens of millions of dollars from the nuclear and coal industry. Now they're shoveling in money from the natural gas industry. Is there anything you cannot buy off an Ohio Republican to do at this point?
Finally, the European Union this week unveiled a major clean tech industrial plan to accelerate deployment of renewable energy manufacturing as a counterweight to President Biden and the Democrats' landmark Inflation Reduction Act, which contains billions in subsidies for U.S.-based manufacturing. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said it was important to avoid switching dependence on Russian fossil fuels with dependence on China for raw materials.
We see aggressive attempts to attract our industrial capacities away to China and elsewhere. We have a compelling need to make this net zero transition without creating new dependency. We've learned our lessons from the fossil fuels.
Have we? Have we learned our lessons? I'm not yet sure, especially in Ohio.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So my mind is still in this place on Social Security, because I think it's important to remember Social Security has been the best anti-poverty program we've ever put into place. By far. Took seniors who were living lives of being in destitute, living in I go back to when I was a kid. My mother worked in a nursing home for the indigent. These were people who didn't, Social Security, they got pennies out of. And their lives were horrible. They were warehoused in horrible places. And the stories that they told, and look, I was fortunate enough to have to be in that place, and I got to listen to these people's life stories. They got to, how horrible things used to be, and you think where we are, and there's this idea, and I've had people tell me, no, the Republicans, they just use this Social Security, it's just a political ploy. They're not really going to destroy it. They're not really going to take Social Security away from Granny. They're not really going to take Medicare away from Granny. They're not really going to, end Roe versus Wade. Oh, wait a minute, they did. I go back to that when someone, the Maya Angelou quote, when someone shows you who they are, believe them when they say they want to destroy Social Security and Medicare. Believe them. Now, what's interesting to me is they all pitch this. Well, we want less spending. One of the conservative minds, we need to spend less. But yet, when I ask conservatives, what do you want to spend less on? What spending do we cut? Can't touch the military budget. Can't do that. That's off the table completely. Can't touch the tax code. That we give trillions of dollars to the very wealthy and corporations. Can't touch that. So what do? Well, we kick the poor. We kick people who, again, as was pointed out earlier, those who are viewed as less deserving. But when it comes down to actual cuts, the average Republican voter, and this is where the difference between the policymakers and the people are. I've been taking a lot of guff here the last couple of days because I've said, look, these failed states in the South that don't help their citizens, don't protect their citizens, don't lead to places like Arkansas, like Georgia, like Alabama, like Mississippi, lower life expectancy rates, higher infant mortality rates, higher poverty rates. All of the negatives are higher, all of the positives are lower. Does it mean that I have a problem with the people of Alabama or Arkansas? No, I've met them. They're beautiful people. I want the best for them. It's their policymakers. It's the ideology that's being rammed down people's throats. That's what I have a problem with. Practice your religion. Do your thing. But don't push it on other people. I go back to I was thinking about an acquaintance I had years ago. And I can remember it like it was yesterday because it was such a foreign idea that I was just like, wow, so you literally reach into a box of snakes. As part of their religion, they would reach into a box of snakes and pick up and handle the snakes, because in the Bible it says something about handling snakes. And I said, well, what happens if you get bitten? Oh, well, we've got the anti-venom in the back. And this comes back to that mental gymnastics that a lot of my Republican friends have. I said, well, hold on. If the test is, you reach into the box and it's God's will that the snake bites you and you die, aren't you usurping God's will? No. The mental gymnastics come. If God didn't want us to have the antivenom, he wouldn't have allowed us to create it. And I'm going, okay, well, what's the point then? If you're supposed to, reach into the box, God's will is you get bitten and you die, but you have the ability to not die. What's the exercise for? He said, it's to make us lead better lives. And I'm going, at a certain level, okay. How many times have you been bitten? Like 7 or 8. Really? And the more I learned about this guy, the more he would do just the most outrageous, unethical, unfaithful kind of things. Not going to go into it because he's probably listening. But the justification was there. And they've used this kind of stuff to justify just about anything. And taking food out of the mouths of children and granny, that doesn't faze them. On the aggregate, I mean, when you talk to individual people, I love individuals. Groups, not so much. And I think this is what's going on with the Republican Party, that once you say, hey, there's something wrong with your party platform, there's something wrong with the direction your party's taking this country, it's an attack on the individual. I'm not attacking the individual. When someone says the Democrats are screwed up and they do something stupid, I look at it and go, yeah, they are. Policy-wise, they may not agree with it. But we're in a weird place in this country right now where we can't have those discussions. The stove thing to me is amazing. Because I do have that vision in my head of someone like Matt Gaetz wearing an asbestos coat going, you're not going to take my asbestos coat? I want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Are you concerned that Social Security is on the cutting block? Or is this just another one of those things you go, look, it's performative. Will Biden actually sign a bill if it ever gets through the Senate? And it won't. And then why? Why the performative stuff? Like the tax thing. We all know that tax scheme that they came out with on Wednesday, never going to pass. Never going to become law. It's their wet dream list. It's what they tell us they want. It's performative for their donor class. Because what that tax bill would do is it would cause massive inflation, and possibly the de-inflation. We would see consumerism, drop. We can have an argument: is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but the policies that they are pushing are horribly destructive for working people, and this is the distinction. The distinction is the policies that they push work perfectly for the folks that they're supposed to work for. These tax schemes are supposed to work for the wealthy. These tax schemes are supposed to enrich corporate America. They're not supposed to help you and me. For me, it's that simple. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are we doing today?
We're doing okay. I'm reporting in because I spoke to my local Trump supporter today.
All right, let's hear it.
They brought up the gas stoves, and we're having a fit. And I was like, you don't even have a gas stove. You have an electric stove. But I like gas compared to electric. I said, okay. And I said, well, they're not coming for the gas stoves. Oh, yes, they are. I said, they're not. I have a gas stove. So I looked it up. The only thing they were saying, they were recommending that some revisions be made to the way things are on the stove, and suggesting that perhaps we should start using electric stoves more. We'll have to go look it up. And then, of course, they brought up that they are not getting rid of Social Security. That's just fake news.
It's fake news. Okay. No, look, you got Joe Manchin in Switzerland, saying, hey, this might be a bargaining chip. We can work on it. But, okay, it's fake news.
Yep. So I'm just reporting back, letting you know what's going on, because they are a big Fox News listener, and they just love the right-wing sites on Facebook. So that's what's going on.
Doing the research.
Oh, yeah. And let me throw this in there. You were talking about the snake handler group.
Yeah.
My husband's ex-wife bunch were snake handlers. So I can assure you that they're all a little bit crazy.
And look, I'm okay with that. God bless you. If you want to do that, that is your right to do. I am never going to stop you from doing something that will only harm you and yourself. When you start harming others, now we got problems. Right.
Well, their thing was they didn't have the venom, but their minister milked the rattlesnakes and copperheads before they threw them out there for them to pass around.
Oh, okay. Well.
And they actually have, and I'm not lying to you, my stepson, unfortunately, was involved in this years ago. That across over in Morgantown, they have a snake hunting thing every year. The fire department does, and I'm not joking on this because my stepson kept trying to get me. I'm like, I'm not getting involved with this. Where then they would then sell the snakes to the local church.
Okay.
So have a good evening, Rick.
Wow. Okay. Well, look, and again, this is the great thing about America. You can do that. And I'm not going to stop you. I have no problem with you going and hunting the snakes. The good thing is you're going to get them out, and maybe it's a positive. But again, it comes back down to something, my grandfather always said, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. And, the whole Justice Hugo Black thing. You have the right to flail your fists around until they touch the tip of my nose. And this is where I keep coming back and siding with liberal democracy. You have the right to do that stuff. In conservative world, in the world that they want to create for us, this utopia that we hear from the right, you don't get to be whoever you are, whoever you want to be. You have to mold into what their narrow minds. And look, I don't agree with people. I would never pick up a snake. In fact, my youngest daughter has one. I said, if I have to pick it up, he's going to meet the business end of a shovel. It's that simple. You have the right to do that. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to my philosophy of I don't care. I don't care what you do. I want you to be happy. I want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Quick break. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Kurt sent me an email. And if you want to email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com is the email. He says, an interesting, not so fun fact. All of the Republicans who are serving on the House Homeland Security Committee either asked for a pardon for Trump for their involvement in the insurrection on January 6, 2001, or voted against certifying the electoral votes of the 2020 presidential election. Another interesting and not so fun fact is that Kevin McCarthy, our Speaker of the House, who is behind the vice president in the presidential line of secession, also voted against certifying the 2020 election. The American Republican Party's elected officials are exactly like the Saudi Taliban back in 2001 under Osama bin Laden, and the Republicans are much more dangerous because they are an enemy from within. It's interesting you bring up Bin Laden. Someone asked me just today, did I know if Bin Laden's cousin, because evidently the Bin Laden family is huge, that one of his cousins is a conservative pundit here in this country. He's like, did you know that? I'm going, yeah, I understand. The Bin Laden family's rich and powerful and in a lot of places, a lot of media spaces. And you may remember, after the attacks on 9/11, the Bin Laden family was able to get out of Dodge on private jets before they stopped all of the planes from leaving the country. So, yeah, I'm not surprised by that. And Kurt, you're not wrong. It just is. It is what it is. Also got an email that says the national debt incurred since 1789, when George Washington became president, to the present, 1/4 of the 234 years of debt it was incurred between January 20th, 2017 and January 20th, 2021. Refresh my memory. Who was president in those 4 years? Yeah, it was the former guy. It was 45. And we know he spent a huge amount of money. And you know where a lot of it went? Most of it went to rich people, because that was the plan. You look at that tax code. You look at the one legislative victory that they had, the one thing that they did follow through on, that tax scheme. It enriched the very wealthy. All of the benefits that came to working people like you and me, all of those are sunsetting. So any of those benefits are going to go away unless they're re-upped down the road. And remember, Rick Scott has his 11-point plan to sunset all federal programs every 5 years so that they have to be reauthorized. Again, another backdoor way of destroying Social Security and Medicare. Again, back to their wet dream list. Understand who these people are and what they want, what the future for this country in their mind is, and where they want to take us. This is the concern that I have. Again, we're so focused on what other people are doing in the confines of their four walls. The people who tell us they want small government. I actually don't know what that means. I want effective government. I don't care what size it is. I want it to work. Right now, we don't have effective government because it's being run by people who have told us they don't believe in it. This is the part that I'm struggling with, and what goes through a voter's mind that they go, no, I'm going to vote for the guy who's telling me they're going to destroy what's going on. Now, understand, and I get it. Those voters have been sold, 40 years of Limbaugh and outrage radio. They've been outrage cable news. They've been sold this, that the country's under attack and all these nefarious forces are around every corner. The stove troopers are coming. Much like MS-13. Remember them? You don't hear much about MS-13 anymore, do you? But every couple of months, there's a new boogeyman. There's somebody else to be afraid of. Which is why you gotta grab your gun. Because they're around every corner. Be afraid. And then lash out. And this works to whose advantage? The wealthy. Because when you talk to the average person, and I talk to Republican voters all the time, they want the same things I do. Individually, when you talk to them person to person, they want the same things that I do. We want health care. We want good jobs that pay wages that we can support our families on. We want some retirement security that when we get old, we're not going to be destitute. We want opportunities for our kids, education, job opportunities. There's a place where everyone should come together on issues, trade. We should be agreeing on trade. We should make stuff and actually trade it instead of shipping jobs overseas and then just buying stuff from overseas that we used to make here and calling that trade. I've yet to find a Republican who says, no, we should do away with Social Security. But you ask them about socialism, they blow a gasket without thinking that, in the word Social Security is the word social. Never mind. Because they see it in action. I've been called everything under the sun, and I get the email so you don't have to. But there is a way forward that creates an environment for families to do better. And we're not getting that out of today's Republican Party. I wish we did. Look, I wish we were arguing about policy initiatives. I wish we were arguing about, which way to get to the destination. When my wife and I jump in the car together, we're gonna debate on how we get there. Fortunately, she's come accustomed to closing her eyes while I drive. But we're both going to the same place. The question is how to get there. We're not doing that anymore. You've got these characters who it's all about them. It's all about, and I love this, we're going to tick off the libs. Little secret, you don't anger me. My resolve becomes stronger because we have to fight to defend what this country stands for and the direction we're going to take this country, which is a liberal democracy where people have opportunities and freedom to be who and whatever they are within the confines of their four walls and in the space between their ears. Yeah, I get this nonsense. Well, we got to do away with same-sex. I don't care about same-sex marriage. Two people want to get married, God bless them. Wish you the best. Just don't make me do it. But we've been sold this outrage that everything is dire. And there are some good things happening in this country. We're investing in the future for the first time in a long time. We've actually got policies that are moving us, I think, in a better direction to undo some of the bad policy of the supply side voodoo Reaganomics. The idea that we give rich people everything they want and maybe there'll be something left over for us. Let that sink in for a minute. That's what they sold us. They packaged it better because they're slick. They packaged it in hyper-individualism and then you're going to be rich. When the reality is inequality in this country is getting bigger and bigger to where we're back to the Gilded Age with wealth inequality. The difference is they keep us entertained with bread and circus, or as I used to say, American Idol and Cheetos. Question is, what are we going to do about it? This Social Security thing, is this finally the battleground that working people fight for? Or do we, again, acquiesce? When will we be like the French? He said we should be like the French. They're talking about raising the retirement age by 2 years from 62 to 64 in France. And they're marching in the streets. They're shutting things down. Direct action. That's what democracy looks like. That's what people power is. Will we do that on things that matter? No, but we'll send some crazy people to the Capitol to defecate on our floor and urinate on people's desks, all in the name of stopping the steal for a guy who clearly lost and truly knew he lost, but was a poor sport. This is the sad reality of who we've become. Are you happy with who we've become? Are you happy with the poor sportsmanship? I hope not. Hope not. Lots to get to. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, China on front stage. As I've been saying, I think the Biden administration is doing a good job moving us in a direction to reshore manufacturing, invest here at home. There are some conversations coming up in China here in the future. We've got some elected leaders and our Treasury Secretary trying to figure this stuff out. The hope, reshore manufacturing, become the economic powerhouse we once were. I think we can do that. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. That was the day that 2 striking workers were shot and killed by gunmen hired by a fertilizer plant in New Jersey. In addition to the 2 killed, many more were beaten and injured by the hired guns. The workers were represented by the Chemical Workers Union. They had gone on strike after their wages were arbitrarily slashed by the company. That past October, their pay was cut from $2 a day to $1.60. The company promised to end the 20% cut in the new year, but January came and the massive wage cuts were not restored. Fed up, the men called for a strike on January 3rd. And on this fateful day of the shooting, strikers believed that a train coming in from New York was going to deliver strike breakers to the plant. 200 of the strikers came out to meet the train. According to a police officer on the scene, some strikers peacefully boarded the train to check for replacement workers. They found none. But then armed detectives hired by the company rushed out of the plant. They shot indiscriminately into the crowd of unarmed strikers. One of the 2 men killed was said to have had 6 bullets in his body. The policeman who observed the violence recalled, "It's impossible to describe how those unarmed, defenseless men were shot down. Some ran and escaped injury. Those who were unable to get to high ground made for the swamps. And it was those men that were shot, beaten, and then shot again." 31 of the hired guns were arrested. 9 were found guilty of manslaughter. The strikers returned to work at a new daily wage of $1.80 an hour. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Growing up, I absorbed a lot of values from my old Texas daddy. A strong commitment to the common good, a healthy work ethic, and a lively sense of humor. But one thing about him I've rejected: his determination to have a perfect yard of thick, verdant St. Augustine grass. Lord, how he worked at it, laying sod, watering, fertilizing, watering, weeding, watering, spreading pesticides, watering, mowing, more watering. But it was too hot, too dry, too infested with blight, bugs, slugs, and such. He was up against Texas nature, and he just couldn't win. So I've gone in the opposite direction, slowly nurturing a natural yard of native trees, drought-tolerant plants, and a general live-with-nature ethic in my little landscape. I'm hardly alone in this rejection of the uniform green grass imperative. A spontaneous yard rebellion is taking hold across our country as more and more households, neighborhoods, businesses, etc. shift to a nature-friendly approach. A particularly encouraging push for change is coming from school kids, elementary level through college, who are appalled by the poisoning of our globe and organizing locally to do something that both makes a difference and makes a statement. One exemplary channel for their activism is a student movement called Rewild Your Campus. Of course, some people consider wild yards to be scruffy, ugly, unruly. That's their choice, but some also insist that tidy grass lawns must be everyone's choice. So they proclaim themselves to be the yard police, demanding that cities and homeowner associations make green grass uniformity the law. They file busybody lawsuits and run right-wing social media campaigns targeting people and groups that disobey. This is Jim Hightower saying, these attacks are silly because they are silly, and also because they're attacking the future. To work for yard sanity and choice, go to rewild.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Wednesday, you had Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen visiting with the Chinese vice premier over there in Davos there. And look, this is another one of those points of contact between the Biden administration and the Chinese going, hey, we're not going to undo all the stuff that everyone thought we were going to do and undo the tariffs and go back to business as usual. And thank goodness it's about time we wake up. And I don't know how much of this is, coming out of the pandemic, that we realize our supply chains are horribly broken and we're way too dependent on communist China, or if it's just us going, hey, wait a second. We want the jobs back. We should have domestic production for domestic consumption. Heading in the right direction. At least I think so. And here to share some thoughts on, well, are we? And is the administration doing what we need to do? And are they doing it fast enough? That's why I've asked Emily De La Bruyere to come talk with us. She's the co-founder of Horizon Advisory. HorizonAdvisory.org is their website. They've also got a new piece out on Dell bringing production back, and also asking the question, is that enough? Emily, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with what's going on over there in Switzerland with Yellen and the vice premier there. Another point of contact, another moment for the Biden administration to stand up for American workers. Am I reading this right, or is there something else here?
I mean, obviously, I always have to see the glass half empty because that's why you have me on. There's a part of this that I actually find very frustrating because on the one hand, yes, the Biden administration's rhetoric has correctly been one of competition with China, but much of the reason, or at least how they're framing their recent interactions with the Chinese government, including Yellen's visit with Liu He, much of that they've said is like around making sure that competition stays below a simmer, managing the competition to make sure it doesn't turn into conflict. And I mean, that's a frustrating thing, at least for me to see, because this is a conflict. China sees it as a conflict. And saying that the US is trying to manage it to keep competition limited to certain domains or below a certain threshold means that China doesn't take us seriously, because they know that we're constantly going to try to find a compromise and that we're going to try to de-escalate the second anything gets too extreme. And that gives them something to play with.
But could you look at this and go, look, we're losing. We've lost this battle already. We've given away our manufacturing base. Coming out of the pandemic, I think most of us realized our supply chains are way too broken and we're way too dependent. Maybe I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here of going, look, we're in a weak position at this moment. And this is a negotiating tactic as we try and reclaim some of my manufacturing. Or am I just justifying?
Maybe you're the pessimist, not me. This is great. We're still the global leader, right? Like, yes, our manufacturing is absolutely, devastated vice where it was. In some very, very critical sectors, we've lost, all our capacity. Really across the board, we've lost much of our capacity. We've lost, the kind of support skills, the infrastructure we need for manufacturing. But we are still the dominant global power. And that gives us, I think, more leverage than saying that we're losing gives us credit for. We do control the global system. China is very dependent on us in key domains. We have strong allies whom we can and should be pushing. We have a strong private sector. China can't function without us right now. The point is, but we're not competing in a way that actually pushes on their weaknesses.
No, I agree. But my problem is coming out of this pandemic, and the pandemic, I think, has magnified what we've been talking about on this show for years, is that by giving away your manufacturing ability, take chips, for instance. There are so many things we can't make without these magic chips. Why we allowed production to go overseas is beyond me. Why we allowed that vital component, especially on the military front, to be made in China is well beyond my realm of understanding, other than we had some CEOs who go, hey, this means more money for me, more power for the corporate interest. Screw those workers, screw the consumers, screw the country. We care about profit. I get that, but I don't know as a country why we allowed it.
Because we're short-termist, because we didn't look in the long term, because we love convincing ourselves that the myth of globalization is right and everyone actually is out there for mutual interest, because we bought China's propaganda.
Did we buy it, or did corporate America sell it to us in prepackaged little Madison Avenue kind of talking points? Because I never bought the whole thing of, hey, let's go get cheap products from somewhere else and bring them back here, and we won't make it here, and it's going to be great. We're all going to have corner offices and wear white shirts and ties and be able to buy all the cheap plastic crap we can get from China, and it's going to be utopia. That never lasts. I don't even know that it ever happened.
I mean, I take it back. Washington bought the Chinese propaganda and the propaganda that was redisseminated by corporate America. But yeah, I think that's key. And I mean, that's like when you talk about Chinese propaganda in general. It's not just Beijing spouting it. It's Beijing using its mouthpieces across the U.S. to spout it, which is what makes it that much more dangerous.
Now, you guys have a new piece out over at the Force Distance Times, forcedistancetimes.com, the website. The story, why Dell ditching Chinese chips is great, but not enough. And you, in this the part that caught my attention is you point out that as of 2021, 85% of Dell's supply chain is in China. And when I told my kids that, they go, well, wait a second. I thought Dell was an American company. I thought, dude, you got a Dell. I thought that was here, and it's not.
I mean, that's great. So in Chinese media, if you look at Chinese media talking about Dell, they describe it as a foreign-owned domestic company, a foreign-owned local company. Like Dell is so embedded in terms of production, in terms of joint ventures, research and development in China, that it's actually described in Chinese sources as effectively a Chinese company.
Wow. Now, they are bringing some, as I understand from your story, they're bringing some chip production somewhere else, maybe not here, per se, but they're moving a little bit out of China. And you think this is potentially a good thing, or I think, as you put it, or putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole?
So they announced last week, right, that they're going to try to move away from Chinese-made semiconductors, and that they're also going to encourage their suppliers to decrease dependence on Chinese products, which is, I mean, that's great, right? Like any announcement like that on the part of a US company, especially a big US company, is a huge step, and it signals a change to this decades-long offshoring dependence to and on China. But it's not like this is just a semiconductors problem. It's not like Dell can just make this announcement and fix its broader exposure problem with China. So if this is like the first in many announcements, that's great. If this is the first in Dell shutting down its research and development centers in China, that's fantastic. If Dell's also moving its Chinese suppliers to non-Chinese suppliers, all of those, that would be the turnaround we need. But the risk is that Dell, the US corporate sector, the US government, what have you, have minimized the China problem to one about semiconductors or about very, very specific nodes that are buzzy and have press attention, and therefore missed the reality that this is a much, much larger industrial problem across every sector, every node, and every value chain across the board.
Now help me here, because I've been encouraged by what the administration has been doing on the CHIPS bill and some of this stuff of reclaiming manufacturing and bringing it back. Not thrilled that we have to pay for it, but eventually we have to get it back one way or another, because we do need to have the ability to produce domestically, if not just because it's going to create the jobs in the economy we need, but from a national security standpoint, if you can't produce anything, you're kind of screwed in a world if you're going to be a military power. I look at the administration as moving us in a direction to get away from the same horrible neoliberalism that caused this kind of situation. The bad trade deals, the corporate pipeline that ships jobs overseas that we have to fund. Do you hold my optimism that maybe this is the beginning of a change globally, or is this just an opportunity for the moment? Because I'm hoping that this is the change I've been screaming about for decades now.
First of all, you need to manufacture not only for national security, but also economic security. Like, how are you supposed to have growth, have opportunity, have a country that builds if we can't make anything? But to the actual question, I'm of two minds. So this has been a watershed past few years, and like that's undeniable, right? There's new production coming to America. There's a new rhetoric about nearshoring and reshoring, and companies and investors are taking it seriously. That said, and it's really like the Dell story magnified, this is not enough. The CHIPS Act is not enough. That approach to industrial policy or to reinvesting in American production is not enough, because are we really going to take the CHIPS bill, all tens of billions of dollars of it, and do that across every value chain that matters and every node in every value chain that matters? That's not what the US does. Like, that's not how we operate, and think how much we would have to pay for that. Like, there has to be a broader approach, one that realizes that there are things beyond semiconductors that matter, but also it's not going to be the government directing everything. And part of, I think, what that means is imposing real costs on China for distorting markets. It's not just subsidizing to bring, U.S. subsidies up to match Chinese subsidies. It's also punishing China for their non-free market approach. Because if we just keep building subsidies after subsidies, China's going to win that contest. That's like competing against Beijing's greatest strength, which
Right.
is not going to be good for
No,
us.
because our political system doesn't allow for that. I mean, just to get the meager investment that we've gotten in infrastructure and this chips bill, which both historic, but not big, not chunky, not bold, not visionary like I would have liked to have seen. In fact, the infrastructure bill was $1.2 trillion, and you've got the American Society of Civil Engineers saying we need $4.8 trillion. I mean, these half measures only get us so far. Whereas you're pointing out that China can just do this because they're a communist government.
Exactly, and we're not actually holding them accountable for breaking the rules of the global system.
But here again, you wrote in this piece that I found interesting of how ingrained these American companies are in the Chinese communist government, and how Dell with the surveillance state and developing software and all kinds of things that have really bore them in, and I would argue harmed not just us but the globe. How do you untie that then? How I'm trying to figure out how they're able to back away from that, because they are so dependent and ingrained in there.
Yeah, and because of that, that's one of the big reasons that the US hasn't imposed the costs on China and on China exposure that we should have, because every time there's really hard-hitting legislation on that front, the US private sector comes in and says, oh no, we can't do that. It'll destroy our business models. We won't be able to operate. And
yeah, but shouldn't it? This is where I go, shouldn't it? Should this not destroy them? Should this not be the moment where you go, hey, you made your bed, lay in it. You're the one who made these unholy alliances. You're the one, for pure greed, who sold this country out and ran over there for slave labor and lax environmental regulations and more profit in your pocket while screwing over the workers in this country. You deserve what you get. Shouldn't we do that?
And markets work. So if companies are forced to figure out another way, either they will, or a new competitor will come in and do this a way that actually helps America. So that's the US, the government needs to step up. American people need to step up and actually hold companies accountable.
And this is where I was going to go.
It goes back to the point about actually punishing China for breaking the rules. That's only one part of it. The other part is punishing US companies for undermining US strength. So there should be much, much stronger costs imposed on American companies for selling us out to China and for continuing to do so.
And this is where consumers have to play into this. This is where, I'm thrilled with the administration's Buy American policies. I'm thrilled with the idea that the EVs and the new technology that they're going has incentives if they're made here. I think we need to do that. I know Europe's losing their mind over the incentives on the EVs and new technology, but you know what? At some point, you got to begin rebuilding your own house.
That Europe thing also. Okay, my whole objective for this was to get the quote "Yellen about Yellen" in here. So I don't want to be yelling about Yellen, but I think the Europe thing is also important. Vice her meeting, her China meeting, Europe is really mad about the U.S. only focusing on China, and with reason. Europe is our ally, and yes, the U.S. should be pushing Europe. But now's the chance to do so, rather than signaling to them at Davos that all we care about is China and all we care is our kind of flip-flopping approach to China. And just, following those proceedings from a distance, I have been frustrated by the US not actually sitting down with our partners and being here's what we're doing, here's why it matters, let's try to get on the same page about this. And if we're going to prioritize China, which yes, we should in a competitive way, we should be prioritizing China in a way that's aligned with Europe.
No, because I've been watching a lot of the content coming out, out of Davos, and a lot of the commentary is that basically Europe is the battleground in this war between the U.S. and China, and we do need to bring our allies in. We do need to have a joint strategy. And look, I say this about Trump all the time. I give him credit for the blind squirrel finding the nut. China is a problem, has always been a problem, something I've been screaming about. But didn't do anything. I mean, the tariffs were a half measure, but didn't have a strategy, didn't have a plan to pull the rest of the world in. And I'm hoping that the Biden administration does. Because let's start here. Are you surprised that the administration didn't undo the tariffs, the Trump tariffs?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, at this point, this is great, right? This is the most positive I see. The political pressure is such that you cannot do that. Bipartisan issue, an American public issue The American public is pressuring the US government to be tough on China. And it now comes at a real political cost for either party not to. So no, I'm not surprised. And I think that pressure is going to stay, which is great.
No, it's what we need. If we're going to rebuild our manufacturing prowess, if we're going to bring jobs back, if we're going to heal our supply chains and deal with our inflation problems, it starts with being able to produce your own stuff. Because again, this is part of it. The inflation is due to our broken supply chains. Also, good old-fashioned American greed. That's a big part of it. But also our broken supply chain. And if nothing we learned coming out of the pandemic, that should be the lesson. Make stuff at home.
Yeah. And that was the real danger to my mind with all the talk about pulling back tariffs to respond to inflation that would have fixed the wrong problem, because that would just perpetuate the broken supply chains that are themselves the underlying issue.
So last question I've got for you, because I'm a little more hopeful now than I've been in a very long time. I see the administration doing some things I'm happy with. Are you hopeful that we're heading in the right direction? I know a lot more needs to be done. I know we need to be much bolder, and we can argue tactics. But do you have hope at least we're moving in the right direction?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's I have hope in that the political incentive is there, but also it seems like the market incentive is there. It's very clear that investors are moving toward companies that are operating on an invest in American production logic. It's clear those companies are doing well, but also that the reverse is true, that investors are worried about China and companies are worried about having major China exposure. And the US is the US, right? So recognition and political pressure in Washington is one thing. What we need is the market also to be on board. And it seems like increasingly both those forces are aligned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this, and your article on Dell, was now you could take that about the thousands of companies that have gone over there and how they've integrated their supply chains and become hyper dependent. Because as you pointed out, 3/4 of their productive capacities is reliant on China. I don't know how you run a lemonade stand like that, being that dependent on someone who's that well. At any minute can steal your technology. And if you get ripped off, you deserve it. I've always said that. You went over there, you knew what you were getting into, you got ripped off. Well, that's your problem. There's a place where you could come where your intellectual property is well protected. Right here, you should have stayed.
Precisely. 100%.
I know I rambled a bit, but this is one of those issues that I'm hoping we finally come back to some bit of sanity on. But I hope folks will take a look at the article, Why Dell Ditching Chinese Chips is Great, but Not Enough, written by our good friend here, Emily De La Brea, co-founder of Horizon Advisory. We'll get links out over at forceddistancetimes.com, how you can get that. A lot of websites. We'll put it out on social media. Emily, great talking with you. I appreciate you taking time for us.
Absolutely. It was great to see you.
All righty. Going to take a quick break. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1920. 3,000 members of the Filipino Labor Union went on strike against the Hawaiian Sugar Planters Association on the island of Oahu. Plantation bosses intentionally recruited Filipino workers in an effort to weaken the Japanese labor force on the island. The bosses pitted one group as strike breakers against the other. The Filipino workers were paid 30 cents less each day than the Japanese workers, in a blatant effort by the plantation owners to sow inter-ethnic disharmony among the employees. The workers also had to purchase goods at extremely high prices from the company stores. Filipino-born Pablo Manlepit, trained as an attorney, became a vocal organizer with the workers. He helped lead the strike, which called for an 8-hour workday and a pay increase. The Japanese Federation of Labor quickly joined the strike, increasing the strikers' numbers to more than 8,000. Portuguese, Chinese, Puerto Rican, Spanish, Mexican, and Korean workers all took part in the fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. The plantation bosses Boss's strategy of intentionally creating ethnic tension had failed, and 75% of the sugar workforce on the island of Oahu participated in the strike. The action cost plantation bosses $12 million in lost production. In response, the heavy-handed bosses evicted more than 12,000 workers from their homes. The now homeless strikers stayed with friends, in hotels, or in makeshift accommodations. Some took shelter at Buddhist and Shinto churches. Christian churches on the island opposed the strike, however, and turned away the homeless workers. The strike lasted nearly half a year, and despite the evictions, the overwhelming financial challenges, and a Spanish flu epidemic, the unified workers stood strong and won a 50% increase and better benefits. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind. Email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So, I'm looking at this story that Emily De La Bruyere and the folks over at Horizon Advisory came out with on Dell, and it can be any company that went over to China. They got lured in. Cheap labor. You can use slave labor. You can abuse your workers. No minimum wage. No maximum hour laws. None of that American stuff. And when the workers, have had enough and they want to commit suicide, you just put nets in the stairwells so nobody can do it, and then put them back to work. So they got really cheap labor. They got no environmental regulation. They got whatever they wanted. Massive subsidies from the Chinese government, and they got sucked in. And as they point out, 85% of Dell's supply chain was in China in 2021. 75% of its productive capacity in China, heavily reliant. So when the communist Chinese government says jump, you better know how high. They put their research and development plants there. They've worked on surveillance. They've worked on all kinds of things that I would argue not great for democracies. And basically stole their technology and are taking over their technology. And you go, well, why would they do that? Well, it's the greed. It comes back to the greed of our CEO class, the folks who sit in those ivory towers and think about how they can maximize their own wealth and that of the shareholders, because the shareholders are sacrosanct. We got to maximize shareholder wealth at all costs, even if it means using slave labor, even if it means screwing over a couple of generations of American workers, stealing their pensions, crushing wages, all that stuff. And I've been screaming about this for years because of all of the negatives that come out of it. But I know, but Rick, we get cheap stuff. No, we don't get cheap stuff. When you look at the total costs, it's not cheap. And from the national security standpoint, and this was the conversation I had with my kids today, as we were talking about this, we won World War II for two reasons. One, we had an energy supply, and two, we had massive manufacturing capacity that can be moved over to war production. Do we have that capacity currently? We just did a tour back in October and into November, the Working Class Heroes radio tour, where we went to a lot of places where we used to make a lot of stuff. Those buildings are hollowed out. Those buildings are remnants of what they used to be. I know, we're not going to fight wars like we used to. Yeah, we're going to fight them with chips made in China. So the question is can we move faster? Look, I'm happy with the Biden administration moving us in this direction of undoing some of the negatives of the last 40 years. I just think we need to be moving a lot faster. And we'll see. It's going to come down to you. It's going to come down to me. It's going to come down to us saying enough is enough. And changing our thinking on what we've been sold over the last 40 years. What the economics profession has jammed down our throat as well, absolute. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find yours, you'll find ours. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.